All right, thanks, Rob. All right, okay, this is a work session for the Board of Education of Logan Township. Initially, it'll be just a presentation by Superintendent Haney on her reopening plans for the school, the discussion of the board, and then after that, we'll open up the meeting to the public for any comments or questions they might have on it, and then the board will vote on the motion that's in front of it. So, Pat, you want to take over?
Do we need to take a roll call, Frank?
Not for a work session.
Okay.
Sarah, are you bringing it up?
Yep, I was waiting to make sure you were ready.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Last night when I was watching the Democratic National Convention, there were a couple glitches in passing over the electronic baton from one presenter to another. So I don't feel bad that we have a couple, pauses.
Yep, I was waiting to make sure you were glitches like that, you mean, right?
Yeah, that's
I
right.
think we're good now.
Okay. So you're bringing up the PowerPoint?
Yep.
Okay. So we'll move to slide 2. This is my recommendation to the board after quite a bit of work with my administration of where we should go for September, considering where we are at in relation to the COVID virus. With less than a month remaining before schools are scheduled to reopen, it is time to reluctantly acknowledge that we cannot guarantee that we are able to achieve our former goal to successfully open in-person instruction while keeping a healthy and safe environment for all students and all staff. In July, we were mandated to provide a plan that included an in-person component for all students. There were no alternatives. That was a mandate by the governor. When the plan was presented to the board in July and approved, we didn't have the ability to offer all remote learning. We also weren't asked to sign the following attestation statement at that time. And you turn to this is the beginning of the attestation statement that I was being asked to sign off on. And then the next slide states the criteria that we have to meet. And it's listed here. These were 6 of the criteria that I had to sign off that I was going to meet with fidelity. And then the next slide shows the criteria that I was most concerned about. Superintendents were made aware of this statement on August 3rd, along with the release of a checklist, which the county used to see if we had everything included in the plan that was approved at the end of July. We have received confirmation from the county office that they determined that the plan contains all the elements in that checklist, but that was before this current attestation came out. Can you go to the next slide, please? In that attestation statement, these are the statements that are concerning to us. The district will implement all of the minimum standards with fidelity. As outlined in the district's reopening plan, the district will, to the best of its ability, ensure that all students in the district have internet access and one-to-one electronic devices, and the district will implement a schedule that provides public school facilities for at least 180 days. So these were the ones that that concerned us the most. And if you go to the next slide, the statement about fidelity. Go back to the previous slide. I'm sorry, I was off one slide. The word that worries me about signing off here is fidelity to the plan. Fidelity means faithfulness to a person, a cause, or a belief demonstrated by continuing loyalty and support. And all of the minimum standards we are striving to achieve, but I can attest that we're going to be able to achieve all of that for the opening in September. Slide to the next slide, please. So on August 13th, last week, Governor Murphy reversed the course. Now, that was on what I previously talked to you about was up until August 3rd. Then last Thursday, Governor Murphy released the executive order. He had a press conference on Wednesday, released the executive order on Thursday, and he reversed the course on a mandate that schools offer some in-person classes. And he reversed it and said that schools can shift entirely to virtual learning in the fall if they can't meet and can't sign that attestation form, which states that we can't meet all of the state's health and safety guidelines. That means that districts now have the option to open virtually if the district is unable to attest that it can meet those requirements needed for in-person instruction. We did not have this option at the last board meeting. I want the board to understand that. There was not an option. The only option we had to do was follow the governor's executive orders as they were released back in July. The governor's action now prioritizes health and safety and now provides an alternative plan of action for us. We believe that our original plan does not fully meet the health and safety bar, that bar of fidelity set by the state, due to the following reasons: the lack of state funding, staffing, equipment, and facilities issues. As a result, we can present a new plan to the Department of Education for full remote instruction. So the requirements for school districts in September literally has changed throughout the summer, day by day. Until last week, schools were mandated to offer a plan that contained at least some in-person learning for all students. As rule followers, the administrative team worked diligently to put things into place that could best meet the health and safety needs of staff and students and still meet the mandates that the governor is saying. However, once the new executive order came out, our thought process changed accordingly. It has become clear to our administration as we work on all the many details of the planning for the reopening that the goal of returning to in-person learning in our district is simply not safe, advisable, or achievable under current conditions, resource levels, and state reopening standards. As educators, we know and can confidently plan for teaching and learning. But the question of whether a school should be reopening for in-person instruction is clearly, first and foremost, a public health decision outside our expertise. In the absence of clear universal statewide health standards or the necessary resources to ensure all students and staff are safe, we, the Logan Township District Administration, are recommending to begin virtually in September. So the next slide states my board motion, the board motion as it's listed on this slide and as it's listed in the agenda. You can go to the next slide. This remote learning plan would follow the instructional doctrine developed by the administration and would have students and staff interact remotely for the first marking period. This is how we have it defined. The first 6 weeks of the school year would have all stakeholders working remotely. The staff would then transition into the school buildings during the last 4 weeks of this marking period to practice the new health and safety protocols. The safety protocols, we know, do not come naturally to social human beings, but are vital to be followed during this pandemic. We are huggers. We want to stand next to people. We want to touch. So we, even as adults, and even more as adults, because the muscle memory has been set for a longer period of time, we have to practice in our work environment that the new social distancing and the protocols that have to be put in place. Then towards the second half of the marking period, depending on the COVID data, we possibly could bring back our highest needs student population in a staggering basis and practice following the procedures that we have written in our plan. This is important to remember that we believe that after staff and families return from vacation after Labor Day, there's a very good chance that the positive COVID cases could increase. By opening on a fully remote basis in September, we are ensuring that we are somewhat providing a quarantined environment for staff and students, in case this occurs. So I cited Patrick Brennan, who is from the Perlman Center for the Advanced Medicine of University of Pennsylvania, who attended the Garnet Valley Schools board meeting on Monday evening, and he supports this concept. He said summer activities, lack of adherence to CDC measures due to the fact that the end of the school summer activities will likely lead to an uptick. He recommended to the Garnet Valley that the prudent thing to do is for schools to buy time and consider opening. And he stated it to Garnet Valley schools at least until October 9th. I'm going to hand this over to Dr. Jansen, our supervisor of curriculum instruction, because I want her to address the instructional enhancements that we have put in place. The remote instruction that is going to be occurring for the first marking period has been enhanced through a lot of work that we've done ever since the spring. And I am handing this over to Christy to discuss those different enhancements that we've put in place. Dr. Jansen?
All right. Thanks, Pat. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to kind of reinforce what Pat was saying. We've been working on this remote learning plan since school let out in the summer. A lot of it was based off of the feedback that parents provided to us in regards to the way that remote learning took place in the spring. We sent out a survey, I think it was the school climate survey, and we got some feedback from parents in regards to that. And one of the things that parents were really asking for were more live sessions and more consistency among teachers. In the spring, we weren't requiring live sessions, but now with remote learning, we will be requiring live sessions. So all students will receive live instruction from their major core content area teachers. And they also will receive live instruction from their special area teacher and their PE teacher as well. So here's an example of a student's schedule. This is actually a middle school student's schedule, but you can see that there are the majority of the times on there, students will be logging into a Google Meet and receiving live instruction from that, that classroom teacher. Okay. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. A couple other instructional enhancements that are in regards to virtual learning are that we will be offering small group instruction. So not only will the students be receiving live instruction from a teacher, they'll also be receiving differentiated instruction as well in various small group opportunities. We also were able to purchase whiteboards for students for them to have at home. So the whiteboards with the wipe off dry erase markers. And that's a benefit to all students because then all students can respond to questions posed by the teacher versus one student just responding at a time. This can also allow for teachers to assess students on the spot. In addition, we are going to be utilizing Google Classroom for students in pre-K, K, and first grade. With training to be provided to our teachers in the early September in services. And finally here, we will be grading in the same manner that we would grade in a typical setting, in a typical school setting. So it will mimic our normal report card. I can't say that it will be exactly like our normal report card, but it will not be a pass-fail. Students will be getting grades similar to the grading that we do in typical schooling. And I think I have one more slide about some of our enhancements. Yep. We are going to provide Chromebooks to all students in kindergarten through 8th grade, one-to-one Chromebooks for students to use at home. So, you know, if you have multiple children in your home, they will be able to log on at the same time because they will each have a device. We also are utilizing Blocksy, and Blocksy is a monitoring tool so that we can monitor every Chromebook and screen that school-wide device that we are providing to students. So we'll be able to monitor those collectively or individually, and also be able to provide an additional feature that shuts down the computer into a secure testing mode and allowing for students to, you know, not access certain sites while they're taking an assessment on their device. More regular and immediate feedback will be provided from our teaching staff and our classroom aides, and we will be taking attendance in every class. So those are just some of the enhancements that we've really been working on to make this remote instruction look a little bit more advanced and more adaptive for students in the fall.
Thank you, Christy.
Yeah.
Could you go back to that previous one? Did somebody have a question? Did I hear a board member? No? Okay. So just on this slide, I just wanted to reference what Christy spoke about, the Chromebooks, just so to remind the board of how we purchased those Chromebooks. We had a one-to-one initiative for grades 2 to 8. And when the CARES Act money came out in, I think it was late June, somewhere in June, we knew, we had an inkling that we were going to possibly have to do some type of remote learning and make sure that that remote learning was enhanced in September, October, and so forth. And so we used our CARES Act funds to purchase Chromebooks for kindergarten and first grade. And so that every child from kindergarten through 8th grade has a school-wide device. And the reason that was important, besides each child having a device, the school-wide device is important because that the use of Bloxy as a monitoring device, now we can monitor every school-wide device. And therefore we can check on what children are doing and are not doing using our own devices. So that was really critical. While I'm speaking about the CARES Act, just also want to say that we also purchased cases for all of those Chromebooks because we want to ensure that while those Chromebooks are at home, they are being taken care of safely because it is an investment in our made by the district. And thanks to the CARES Act funds. And so I just wanted to elaborate on that. Thank you, Dr. Jansen. I appreciate that. I hope the board sees that the remote learning with all these enhancements that we've made is going as good as we were. And we were better than a lot of places. We are definitely going to have a much better remote learning environment in the fall. And that is why we feel as if we can move into a all remote learning environment in September while we're unsure of the health issues that are going on right now. Next slide. Okay, so when I talked earlier about the attestation statement and not being able to sign that statement saying that we can't meet all of the standards, what minimum standards are we worried we will not be able to meet? Well, we have to address the fact that we have been the victims of reduced state funding. And because of reduced state funding, we have reduced staffing, both teachers, our aides, as well as in our facilities, our custodians. Some other minimum standards we're concerned about are health-related issues, transportation, and equipment. And I'm going to elaborate more on each one of these so that you have a full understanding of what I'm talking about. So as I said, due to the reduction in state aid, we've had staff cutbacks and so we're concerned about full staffing of our essential personnel. In our teachers and aides, our class size has increased due to the decrease in state funding. Our hybrid model that we have that was board approved in July is dependent on every teacher being present every day. I can't attest that that's going to happen. Subs have always been an issue now, and now it's more than ever. And then in the other issue of cutbacks, we had to cut back our custodial staff due to the reduced state funding. And I can't attest that we can adhere to the cleaning schedule we detailed on our plan. We have it in our plan, but I can't attest what that is that we can adhere to that with fidelity because it hasn't been tested with all the cuts. Now, what are our concerns about adequate staffing? Well, it's due to the following. We're uncertain of the number of staff that are going to be able to report to work. There are leaves of absences that have been approved by the federal government and by the state government. And so we're not quite sure about the number of staff that's going to be able to report. And as I said, for the hybrid model, which is a strong model to work, we need staff, every teacher in and every aide able to come to work every day. And we are also uncertain of the number of students who are going to opt for virtual learning. You know that I've shared with you the results of the survey, that presently 35% have changed their mind from the 20% of students who said they were going to do virtual learning back in July 23rd. Now it's 35%. And even since that survey closed, and while it was closing, parents were still responding saying, I can't make up my mind. I'm worried. I'm worried about my child coming back. I'm worried about my child going to school. I can't make up my mind between the two. I haven't been able to complete that survey because I can't make up my mind. I'm worried about a child coming back home and bringing something back, even if they were not symptomatic, but carrying the virus. What other minimum standards are we worried about? Well, I read from the Education Law Center, the executive director said that schools should simply not reopen unless we had one full-time nurse on staff. Well, again, our nurses are at a minimum. We have a shortage of adequate nurses and we can get by with 2.7 nurses normally, but during COVID, I can't attest to the fact that if there is an uptick in COVID cases or suspected COVID cases that we have to send students home, that we're going to be able to operate on with 2.7 nurses. They're wonderful people. They've been supporting us through the summer with giving us their medical expertise, but we just don't know. And so therefore, when I was asked to attest to saying, I will meet those standards and I will have nurses do everything they need to do if and when students and staff have issues, COVID-related issues, I can't attest to that. What other minimum standards are we worried about? Well, the student and staff health screening, ensuring isolation if students exhibit symptoms. We have a plan, but what if there's an outbreak? What if we have a lot of people? How many students can we accommodate? Fully staffing schools when and if students and staff test positive. Ensuring that we can carry on contact tracing. We've never been asked to do that before. With 2.7 nurses and one of them being our contact tracer, that's going to take time. Consistently keeping all students 6 feet apart. We can't, at this point, I think we have to practice that behavior. We have to practice that behavior with adults, let alone practicing that behavior with students. It just doesn't come naturally to human beings. And consistently ensuring that all students wearing masks at all times while on school campuses. I was with an 8-year-old last week when I was on vacation, and his parent did not make him wear a mask. And so when he was speaking to me, I asked him to put a mask on, and he was fumbling on it and touching his face the whole time and moving around. You could tell he was extremely comfortable. I think he touched his face more with me asking him to wear the mask than when he didn't wear the mask. These are all things that we're going to have to train our students, our staff in, and we can't assure it just to start immediately or to bringing everybody back on the first day of school. The facilities is another minimum standard we are worried about. Routine cleaning and sanitation of classrooms. Do we have a plan? Yes, we do. We know when we're going to be doing it as students leave in the morning in the pre-K and K, and then before they come in the afternoon. It's described in the plan, but due to the decrease in custodial staffing as a result of the decrease in our state aid, I'm not sure. Transportation is another area that worries me and worries our administration. Maintaining social distancing and mask wearing on buses, which are an average of right now about 2/3 capacity. How can this be enforced when we cannot staff the bus with district personnel to oversee that adherence? And there's only one adult on most buses. Now, pre-K and K do have an aide on a bus, but the contract bus service vendor has stated that the drivers will not be responsible to hand masks out. However, any student who refuses to wear a mask will not be allowed entry to the bus. That's how they're handling it. So what do we do with the children who refuse to wear a mask and are not allowed to enter a bus? But where do they go? These are all worries of ours. PPE issues. We've ordered PPE. Some have come in, but will we have enough PPE? Will they arrive in time for if we were opening on September 8th? Have we ordered enough? No one knows. There are projections of how many PPEs you could order, you might need, but we really don't know that. And then professional development for staff. We have a lot of new enhancements, as we stated in our instructional doctrine, and we know we need ongoing professional development to make sure we're adhering to that instructional doctrine. That's our area of expertise, and so we need ongoing professional development. And the first 3 days of in-service in September, we know that's not going to be enough. It's got to be ongoing. And if staff have to come in and as of September 8th, oversee hybrid learning as well as remote learning with all of the new enhancements, it's going to be something that we cannot assure that we're going to be able to meet with fidelity. Why does our proposed fully remote plan, what does our plan provide staff and students for the first marking period? Well, I've already spoken that we can attest that the hybrid model can be implemented on the very first day of school. The proposed recommendation would provide the time for staff and students to get used to the enhanced remote learning for about 6 weeks, so they get comfortable in that environment with all the new enhancements, with all the new guidelines. And then it also would provide time for the staff to practice new health and safety protocol when they come into the building for the last 4 weeks before all the students return. And what I added here, and I know the board, you've seen this before, but these are the regional health standards guidelines that were just released last Thursday. These are data standards that we wish we had earlier than this, but I think this is interesting to see that the DOH, the Department of Health for the state of New Jersey, has now broken New Jersey into regions. And you can see that the southern region is in yellow or moderate activity level for COVID, whereas the northern region is in low. And we are in the southwest region. So if we go to the next slide, this was somewhat concerning and alarming as we were making this decision, this recommendation to you. If you look at the Southwest numbers are the highest numbers right now. The case rate is 5.24. And you can see across the row that our numbers in the Southwest region, we're still in the moderate in the twos, but the Southwest region is higher. We don't know what these numbers are going to look like when everybody comes back from vacation and if they commingled, what could happen with the outbreak. Okay, Heather, Mrs. Moran, I think I asked you if you would address the next 3 slides.
Sure. So thanks for all that information, Mrs. Haney. It's a lot of great information that I think we're sharing. Our proposal that we have worked so hard on, the hybrid model, really does follow all the CDC guidelines. All of the protocols and procedures that we've put into place are doing those, just like I think most places across the country have done. But it is a plan, and nobody has tried to put these plans into action. I shouldn't say nobody. Most people have not tried to put these plans into action, and there's a huge difference between putting a plan into action and seeing it on paper. One of the clearest examples of this is UNC Chapel Hill, and while it is a college, they ended up opening just 3 days, closing 3 days after opening, because students weren't following all the guidelines that were put forward there. And I think that's what we're most afraid of. We need every staff member and every student to follow all the procedures that we have in place 100% of the time in order to avoid putting people at risk. And while normally our decisions are important and are dealing with education, that level has been increased when we're talking about the health and safety of every person in our building. And that's just not our area of expertise. And then another concern is, what what happens when there's an issue that we don't have a protocol for yet? There is no precedent for any of this. It's not something that any of us can rely on our experience for. And I feel that is so critical when making these decisions. Plans on paper are just so different from plans in practice. The next issue is really focusing on what we can do well first. I think that there are so few of us in terms of administrators to manage all of the students. If we can put all our emphasis on instructional decisions and helping teachers do the best they can do with all of the new instructional enhancements, I think that's what we need to be best at first. And I think we all feel that we can do that if we can focus all our attention on that. Then we can ease into the management and procedural decisions, again, so that we're putting health and safety at the top of everybody's list. It also allows everyone to participate, regardless of their risk factors. We have staff with different risk factors. We have a number of students with different risk factors. And starting that year in a virtual environment allows us to provide equal opportunity for everyone. And then it really gives us the time to focus on bringing back the neediest students among us first, and introducing staff to all these new procedures while still monitoring the COVID spread and deciding what is safest for everyone. And I think the last bullet on this slide is hugely important. Mental health resources with a counselor in each building really need to be focused on what they do every day. Once we open schools, we are going to be adding to that in terms of fear and anxiety that students might feel. So if we can come back from the summer and allow our counselors to meet the needs of our students that they would normally meet at the beginning of the year after students have been home all summer, and not add on the addition of COVID-related mental health issues, I think that really allows us to meet their needs more easily and more comprehensively. And then the last thing is that truly health and safety is dramatically increased when we go for all remote learning. We can be sure that we are meeting those expectations 100%. We don't have to be focusing our time on contact tracing and who is having difficulty with their masks and who is not staying far apart on a school bus. We can really put our efforts into what we do best, educating students, and put all of our resources into that. And then finally, if we do bring teachers back first before students, it really allows us to make sure that our adults know everything that they need to know and that it is perfect models for kids when they come back. They always look at what we're doing every moment of every day. That has never been more important than it is at this time. We need to be the people that can provide them with the models that they can mimic each and every day when they are able to come back into our schools.
Thank you, Mrs. Moran. So I end with the proposed board motion. Upon the recommendation of the superintendent of the board, I'm hoping that the board will approve the administration to submit a plan to the DOE, a revised plan for all remote learning through the first marking period of the 2021 school year. Right?
Okay, thank you everyone for your input. Now we'll open it up to the board for any comments, questions that you might have on the motion.
Hi, Pat. This is Kim. Just out of curiosity with the devices, so for those students who have Chromebooks from this past semester, would they be keeping those, or would they be getting new ones because you've done something different with these?
I'm going to pass that question. Very good question, Kim. I'm going to pass that question over to Dr. Jansen. Dr. Jansen?
Fumbling a little there.
Okay.
I believe that whatever they currently have, they can keep, unless anybody thinks differently. We haven't completely talked about that. I don't think we have to do anything along those lines, but we do have to administer the Chromebooks to the children who do not have them, which is a fairly large amount.
Dr. Jansen, the Bloxy enhancement that we are putting in each of the devices, that can be done remotely. Am I correct?
I believe so.
Yeah.
But I am not 100% sure about that. I know we have some IT people on the call who might want to jump in.
Hey, this is Rob. I'll jump in. Bloxy is done remotely. It's already installed on all of the devices.
Thanks, Rob.
Sure.
Thank you, Rob.
Yep.
And then my only other question is in regards to if the board does approve this motion and then the Department of Ed says no, so we just revert back to the original hybrid plan, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Mrs. Reed. I don't think that the messaging I'm getting from the DOE, since the governor stated that it is up to the district to go fully remote. And the statement I'm getting from the executive county, from the county, is stating that we will have to have it passed by them again. But the last proposal that we had that the board approved, the comment that I got when I received the confirmation back from the county office stated this: my office has reviewed your district school reopening plan for the 2021 school year using the attached checklist. Based on the review of the attached district plan, the county office was able to determine that the plan contains all the elements of the checklist. So it's not that from what I'm hearing, it's not that the county office or the DOE is going to overrule what the board approves, as long as we give strong reasons why we can't meet the health and safety standards. And I believe that's why I outlined this presentation in the way. The reasons I'm giving you, because of reduced funding, the reduction in staffing, we're worried about having enough staffing in teachers. We're worried about having enough staffing in facilities. We're worried about our transportation. We're worried about meeting those health and safety standards. I think I've enumerated it in a way that that it'll be passed by. Again, I'm taking away the word approved, because right now it's the message I'm getting from the DOE is that the board approves, the DOE just makes sure that it passes the checklist.
Okay. So my last question would be in regards to the school supply list that were issued. Did they already reflect do they represent remote, or would they need to be amended?
I'm going to pass that. Thank you, Mrs. Reed. I'm going to pass that to one of the principals, because I think they just sent that school supply list out this week. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. So Mrs. Kelly, Mrs. Green, Mrs. Moran, anybody?
Mrs. Reed, I can speak to that.
Okay.
Mrs. Kelly.
This is Mrs. Kelly. I think when we put those out, we really did reflect upon the fact that those items would be needed in both a remote and a in-person type of thing. The amount you would need if you were staying home would obviously be the amount you would need if you were staying home. But we thought that those items would work for both environments.
Okay. That's what I figured, but just trying to anticipate what someone might comment about and see, what the response is. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Reed.
And just to remind the board that the state has extended its fiscal year till the end of September. So the school will be open for over a month before we actually know what state aid we're actually getting. So we're going to be in a real iffy situation for the next 30 days.
I think that's a really important point, Frank, and I didn't mention that, and I appreciate you bringing that up, that even though we've already been reduced in significant state funding until the end of September, that could even be reduced more. And if that's reduced even more, we're even going to be in a worse of a pickle, and for lack of a better term. This gives us a little bit of time to work with the resources we have right now in a remote environment.
I have a question. This is Lene.
Hi, Lene.
Hi. So I understand with these types of decisions, you don't want to, I guess, make a decision too prematurely, but at the same time, you want to give parents time to plan ahead. So being that this particular motion is for the first marking period, do you have any sort of timeline as to when you will revisit for the second marking period?
Oh, Lene, that's a very good question. We originally were just extending it for a month. And then I think, and I don't want to speak for Mrs. Green, but I think Mrs. Green said the exact same thing that you just said, giving parents that time frame so that they can plan. And so that's why we did it till November. It really does depend on the COVID cases and where we are at with any of the spread of COVID. We're going to be monitoring that now that the DOH is giving us more health data, more current and up-to-date health data. Every week they're supposed to be giving us that data that I shared with you that we just got at the end of last week for the first time. We should keep on top of that and watch the spread in the Southwest region. So we'll have a better idea, but we're going to be monitoring it constantly. And it really does depend on the COVID spread.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I think the other issue too, I think, Pat, is that starting in September, we're going to start hitting the flu season too, which mimics COVID initially. So that's another issue that we're going to have to face.
Yeah. Yes. Kelly, did you have?
Yeah, Pat and administrative team, I just wanted to say thank you for, being honest with your assessment of the situation, because, I know being an educator too, it's like we've been back and forth, and nothing is worse than the unknown. And even going into education, this will be my 21st year as a teacher. We really want to do right by our community, and I know that this has been unending and it's still not going to be ending, but I just really sincerely appreciate the honesty and the communication. Like Mrs. Moran said, what we had in place for hybrid is only a plan. And to me, it would really be sad and scary if we got in the throes of, the first 2 weeks of school and then we had to back out and, deal with, all of the potential possibilities for families and for students. So I think this is the smartest, most prudent way to approach the school year. And I just applaud everybody's efforts. So just wanted to say thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Mason. We appreciate that feedback.
Okay. Any other questions, comments from the board? Okay, then what I'll do now is I will open up the meeting. So let's have a roll call, please.
Mr. Donnelly?
Here.
Mrs. Kegler? Just giving everybody a chance to answer because I know some people have them. There you go. Mr. Bowen?
Here.
Mrs. Hill?
Here.
Mrs. Lombardo?
Here.
Mrs. Mason?
Here.
Mrs. Reed? Mrs. Reed still there? Mr. Russell? Okay, I'm not sure if Mrs. Reed and Mr. Russell are still there or not.
I see Mr. Russell is still logged in. I do not see Mrs. Reed.
Mr. Russell's on his phone. Jake, is it *6 to unmute?
Yeah, *6 from a mobile phone.
All right, I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Hi, Kim is here. Sorry.
All right, we got both of them.
Both of them are here.
Okay, that's everybody.
Sarah, can you bring back the agenda?
Sure.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, give me 1 minute, please. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes, we're fine. Thanks, Sarah. All right, so now we'll open up the meeting to the public for any questions you might have. Who's taking care of the public questions?
I'm going to read them tonight.
Okay.
Sarah, could you move the agenda up just slightly so both motions can be shown?
Yes.
Thank you. Perfect.
There we go. Okay, our first question is from Stacy Collins, 8 Brookridge Drive. Will students be provided materials such as textbooks, workbooks, math manipulatives to have something tangible to work with at home, or will it all be done online?
Thank you, Stacy, for that question. I'm going to pass that question on to one of our principals, either Heather, Catherine, or Bev.
I can take that, Mrs. Haney. It's Heather Moran. Yes, the short answer is yes. Our plan is to, once we know which direction we're headed, whether it is all virtual or hybrid, that we would provide a packet, for lack of a better word, of materials for students to use at home. Certainly math workbooks, certainly math manipulatives, the whiteboard that Dr. Jansen discussed, and anything else that teachers need to send home for students to be successful. I've had many conversations with special area teachers who are very interested in sending materials home with students as well. So I think that the materials will be plentiful to support the enhancements that we've put in place.
Thank you, Mrs. Moran.
Okay. The second question is from Megan Hernandez, 34 Andrew Court. In regards to the enhancement of remote learning in Chromebooks, how will Block C work with students who use their own Chromebooks, or will they not have the ability to use their own?
I'm going to pass this to Dr. Jansen after I think I'm on the right track, and Dr. Jansen and the principals are going to say if I am or not. We purchased one-on-one devices for every child, so every student K-8 can use the school issued device. And Bloxy is, and for the reason that we want Bloxy to be available on those devices. So that is part of our instructional doctrine. Dr. Jansen or the principals, do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, Bloxy will not be available on a personal device. So it would only be available on the school issued device, which all students will have access to.
So our urging, our recommendation is saying using school devices.
Correct.
That's right. Okay. Thank you.
We have another question from Megan Freehoff, 35 Stone Mill Way. Dr. Jansen stated Chromebooks will be distributed to all students and all students will be able to log on at the same time. Just because everyone has an independent device does not mean all students will be able to log in at the same time. How will the students that cannot log on at the same time learn the lessons? I read that as is. Did that make?
Yeah, that's good. That is good. I know that my understanding is that Mrs. Kelly addressed this already to Mrs. Freehoff, a little bit of it. So Mrs. Kelly, would you like to start, or would any of the other administrators like to respond to that?
No, I can start. Mrs. Freoff, as I have stated, the district is planning to work with individual families if there is a reason their child or children cannot be present for a live session. There's going to be a process in place to notify the individual school principals of that situation. And if a student is in that situation, he or she will have access to a pre-recorded lesson, which will deliver the same content. And then students will not be penalized if they are in that situation and the school administrator and teacher are aware of the situation.
Thank you, Mrs. Kelly. Next question.
Okay, the next question is from Colleen Ketterer, 205 Freedom Drive. The bullet on your slide said grading will be the same, but Ms. Jansen said it will be similar. Will we know before school starts what the grading will reflect?
I'm going to ask one of the administrators or one of the principals or Dr. Jansen to respond to that.
Yeah, I can respond to that. So the slide said that it would reflect what we did in the third marking period. So what we did in the third marking period is very similar to our typical report card. What we did in the fourth marking period at the end of the school year was different. It was more of like a for some schools it was a plus, check, minus, or a meets meets and is approaching or something like that. So there really wasn't much differentiation between the scores. So we are looking to make our grading reflect what we typically do when we're in person. So our typical report card that we provide. I can't say we will definitely have all elements that we provide on that typical report card, but I can say that it will be much more than what we did at Q4. We will definitely let families and students know of this much sooner than we did for remote learning in the spring. I can't say that that will happen September 8th, but hopefully, you know, within September, we will let everybody know about the procedures for report cards and grading.
Thank you, Dr. Jansen. So the best way we could say is that our goal is to get as close to the third marking period grading system as possible in a remote setting, but that is our goal.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
We have two more questions from Megan Freehoff, 35 Stone Mill Way. What is small group instruction? And if you are not able to alert the school and principal prior to missing a live session, how will this be handled?
So I'm going to throw it back to Mrs. Kelly to address the second part of that question and then we'll pivot it over to Dr. Jansen to address small group instruction. Mrs. Kelly, do you want to, Sarah, do you want to read that second part of the question again? For
Sure.
Mrs. Kelly?
Yep. If you are not able to alert the school and principal prior to missing a live session, how will this be handled?
Well, I think one of the items that Dr. Jansen mentioned was that we are going to be taking attendance in the live session. So if there is an emergency that came up or your child is sick, they would not be present in that session. And then as administrators and school counselors and teachers, if that became an issue and we did not understand what the reason was, we would be reaching out to support the family and find out how we can help, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Mrs. Kelly. Dr. Jansen, can you address what small group instruction is?
Yes, so small group instruction is our typical way of administering instruction within the classroom. So typically the teachers will provide a whole group lesson that would provide them with the grade level content. And then based on how students perform within that whole group lesson, we can accommodate small groups. So for some students, a small group instruction will provide them with some remediation or intervention. Other students would provide them with some more grade level content, whereas other students would receive some enrichment activities to go beyond what they were learning in the whole group lesson. So it really provides us opportunities to differentiate. I don't believe that we were doing as much of that virtually in the spring as we typically do in the classroom. So we're hoping that we can provide some of that small group instruction within the virtual environment in the fall.
The next question is from Rebecca Lano, 107 Liberty Court. Will live teaching instructions be available online for replay or review at another time?
I feel like I'm asking a lot of Dr. Jansen, but do you want to answer this question? Go ahead.
Based off of what Mrs. Kelly had just said, she had just mentioned that we are going to be working with families for those families who need a little bit of additional support for recorded lessons based on their situations. We are hesitant of recording live sessions for privacy issues. So we most likely will not be providing links to live recorded sessions because within those live recorded sessions, the students will be within those sessions, and we don't want to distribute that publicly. But if families do need recorded sessions, separate recorded sessions that are not recordings of live instruction, we will be able to provide that.
I think another issue, this is Heather Moran, another issue with recording live sessions is the time it takes to make those sessions available. When we're meeting in a Google Meet, if those sessions are recorded, they have to go to Google and be transformed into whatever form, and I do not know the technical part, I apologize for that, but they have to be transformed into something that can be viewed. And the more Google Meet sessions that are recorded, and that's not just in Logan, that's everywhere that's using Google Meet, the longer that is going to take. So they would not be available right away, just even from a technological standpoint. And that is not just a Google Meet thing, that would be a Zoom thing or any platform of that nature, I believe.
Thank you, Mrs. Moran, and thank you, Dr. Jansen.
The last question is from Amy Powell, Eagle Farm. She asks, will lessons be accessible after class? I believe that was just answered. Is that correct, Mrs. Heaney?
Yes, I would say that was just answered.
That's our final question.
I do just want to chime in because I was able to read that question about if students if they get stuck or confused, that they could be able to go back and view the lesson again. The difference this year is that if a student is confused or stuck and needs a little bit of help, the next day they'll be able to log on with their teacher and get a little bit more feedback through a live lesson and instruction. Whereas with the recorded lessons, we weren't able to do that as often. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Is that Christy, is that also what the whiteboards are for?
Yeah, so the whiteboards will provide opportunities for, like, let's say a teacher gives a math problem out and wants the students to solve the math problem. Rather than one student just responding by raising their hand and giving the answer, all the students will have an opportunity to complete that math problem on the whiteboard, show it up on their screen, and then the teacher will be able to see, where students are getting confused and be able to evaluate the performance of all of their students versus just one student.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Any more questions, Sarah?
Nope, no more.
Okay. There are two motions in front of the board, one to change the meeting from the regular meeting from August 19th to August 26th, and the motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation to virtually open all schools. We have a motion on that.
So moved. Carolyn.
And a second.
Second, Kristen.
And a roll call, please.
Mr. Donnelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Kegler?
Yes.
Mr. Bowen?
Yes.
Mrs. Hill?
Yes.
Mrs. Lombardo?
Yes.
Mrs. Mason?
Yes.
Mrs. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Russell?
Yes.
All right. Thank you all for, and thank you to the community members for dialing in and also asking those questions. Keeps everybody on their toes. And thank you to all the administrators for the hard work you've done to put this plan together. We certainly appreciate it. Having said that, you got anything else to say, Pat?
No, just to say thank you to the board and to the community for ongoing support and understanding that this pandemic has put us in a spot that we never thought we'd be in. We are thinking and reflecting on every decision we are making and trying to keep health and safety of our students and our staff in the forefront, as well as enhancing our instructional delivery system. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we need a motion to adjourn
So moved, Kelly.
and a second.
Second.
All those in
Lene.
favor, say aye.
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 Good night, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight.